Hi, fifth graders. This video is going to extend what we've been learning about ordered pairs and use that information to help us build a line graph. And just like any other kind of graph, a line graph helps us to view information in a visual way. So first, let's do a quick recap of the different parts of a line graph, because line graphs have lots of key features that will be important for us to keep in mind. So the first thing to remember is that line graphs are built on the coordinate plane. I remember that the horizontal line on the coordinate plane is called the x-axis. You're always going to have some kind of label along the x-axis depending on your information. In this example, those labels are going to be the letters A through F. I also know that the vertical line on the coordinate plane has a special name as well. This is called the y-axis. And just like the x-axis, you'll also have different values and labels that go along the y-axis. Today, those values are going to be the numbers 1 through 4. The point where the two axes meet is called the origin. And I can label the origin with the ordered pair 0, 0. Now from here, I can plot several different points to help me show information, but in order to turn it into a line graph, I need to connect those points using line segments. This will allow me to show how the data is changing over time. So let's start just by plotting some ordered pairs. Let's say I plotted these 6 points. From here, I can tell what one individual data point means. For example, I can tell that the data point for an x value of e is e, 3, because I'm at point E along the x-axis, and I'm at point 3 along the y-axis. But right now, that just shows me one little snippet of time. If I want to turn this into an actual graph to show how that data changed over time, I would connect each of these points with line segments to now give me a different understanding of how each of these points goes together. Now that's probably a recap for you from years past, but the next two things might be new to you this year in fifth grade. The first is something called the scale, and the scale is the series of numbers along the y-axis. I've highlighted the scale on today's graph in a purple rectangle. I know that on this particular graph, I started at the origin, which has a value of 0, and I went all the way up to a high point of 4. So for today's example, my scale goes from 0 to 4. Now I also need to pay attention to the difference in between each of the numbers along my scale. The difference between those numbers are called intervals, and it's important that every interval is the same. You'll notice that I wrote the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 exactly on the line along the y-axis. This will help me figure out if my interval is consistent because I can compare the gap between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. In each step, I'm skip counting by 1, so I can say that this graph has an interval of 1. Now finally, we know that all graphs must have a title. So when you're finished plotting your data and connecting it with those line segments, don't forget to title your graph. Let's take a look at another example together. Most of the time, you're going to be given information in a data table, and this can help you figure out the ordered pairs before you start graphing. So here's an example of what a data table would look like. I can tell that this table is showing me all about different hourly temperatures. I have my time, which is going to be listed along my x-axis as my first set of values here. And I have my temperature measured in degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to be listed along my y-axis right here. From here, I can build my ordered pairs. So remembering that time will be my x-coordinate and temperature will be my y-coordinate, I can list my ordered pairs as 10, 8, then 11, 11, 12, 16, 1, 27, 2, 31, 3, 38, and 4, 41. Now that I know my ordered pairs, I can use those to help me build a line graph. And the amount of space that I have will be important. So I'm going to bring up a picture of the amount of space I have to build my graph. The next thing I need to decide is going to be the size of my scale. And remember, the scale on a line graph is the series of numbers along the y-axis. Since the temperature value is what's going to go along my y-axis, I need to look at the numbers outlined in purple. I'm going to look at my range of numbers, so I know the smallest or the lowest temperature was 8 degrees Fahrenheit, and the highest temperature was 41 degrees Fahrenheit. That means my range of temperatures is 8 degrees to 41 degrees. When I'm deciding on my scale, I want to use the size of my graph paper and that range to help me to decide. I'm also going to look for some friendly numbers to help me decide where to start my graph and where to end it. 8 degrees Fahrenheit is pretty close to 0 degrees, which is what the origin point would be, and 41 degrees is pretty close to 50 degrees. So I'm going to make my scale from 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I also need to decide the interval, or how much I'm skip counting by. This is another place where the size of my paper is going to be important. I don't have enough space to skip count by 1. I don't even have enough space to skip count by 2. But if I jump to skip counting by 10, that's only going to use the first 5 lines of my graph paper. So I should plan on skip counting by a friendly number like 5 as my interval to help me use the space as best as I can while still making sense for the numbers. So let's take a look at what our graph paper will look like now that we've decided on a scale and an interval. I have my x-axis labeled with each time, and you'll see that I have the number and AM or PM. And my y-axis has all the values for temperature labeled in degrees Fahrenheit. Each line skip counts by an interval of 5 so that I can best use all the space on my graph. Now I can plot my ordered pairs and connect them with line segments. This is now showing how all of that data changed over time. The last step I need to do is give the graph a title. And I can take that title right from the information in my data table. So today's graph is showing hourly temperatures. So use this video to help you with your practice for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.